debt, the largest sub-sovereign debtor nation in the world, and now we're compounding it with this. Think of what that's going to mean to our children, Mr. Speaker, and I'm going to pick up those thoughts after we're done. Thank you so much.
The honourable member for Barrie-Innisfil will have 5.5 minutes remaining in his time for his remarks on the question that's before the House. Now we're going to statements by members, déclaration de députés, and the honourable member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to celebrate an act of true heroism that occurred in my riding on July 9th last year. This hero has never sought any publicity and instead acted to protect a child from mortal danger with an instinct to which we should all aspire. That hero is Kelvin Stein from Madoc, who saved a 3-year-old girl from being trampled by a team of charging horses that had broken away from their handlers at a fair in Tweed. Kelvin sprinted for the child who was directly in their path and tossed her out of harm's way seconds before the horses ran into him. He sustained severe injuries as the horses dragged him and finally came to a stop. I would invite my honourable colleagues to join me in thanking him for his heroism and congratulating him for his declaration of bravery that the Governor-General presented to him last week. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that the Western Mustangs, after a 23-year drought, were victorious at the Vanier Cup. Saturday's game saw the Mustangs capping off their undefeated record by beating the reigning champions from Laval University with a final score of 39-17. Despite facing down the top-ranked defensive team in the country, Western's relentless offense carried them to a hard-earned victory and a perfect season record in an exciting rematch with the team that stopped them the last time they played for the Cup. To head coach Greg Marshall, quarterback Chris Merchant, defensive player of the game Fraser Sopek, and the entire team, I offer our hearty congratulations. As a former student, I know what it is to be purple and proud. To my colleagues, including the member from Louis St. Laurent, maybe next year. Nudge me. Way to go, Mustangs!
The honourable member for North Vancouver.
Mr. Speaker, this year marks the 40th anniversary of the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada, or COSIWIC. First established in 1977, COSIWIC is the independent body of experts responsible for identifying and assessing the status of wildlife species that may be at risk of extinction or disappearance in Canada. The
committee plays an essential role in ensuring biodiversity and healthy ecosystems and assesses species based on the best available scientific, community, and Indigenous knowledge.
For its important contribution to conservation over the past 40 years, and very much look forward to its future work to protect and promote biodiversity in Canada.
The honourable member for Regina Louvain.
Mr. Speaker, it was great seeing so many people in our nation's capital this past weekend wearing green and white, despite our Rough Riders previously falling victim to a last-minute Toronto comeback. As someone who was elected by 132 votes, I appreciate late-breaking victories and hope that the Argonauts do not face a judicial recount. My grandfather, Ken Weir, played for the Rough Riders from 1949 to 1951. He did not win a Grey Cup, but legend has it that he and some of his neighbors once managed to set up an outdoor hockey rink for well below $5 million. To mention a third sport, we are tremendously proud to have former MMA fighter Matt Fedler as our NDP candidate in the Battleford's Lloydminster by-election. Matt works for the Canadian Mental Health Association in his hometown of North Battleford, and all of us should support his goal of mental health coverage.
The honourable member for Brampton North.
Mr. Speaker, this year we celebrated the 150th anniversary of Canadian Confederation. Since 1867, our great country has established itself as a beacon of hope around the world. From our Charter of Rights and Freedoms to our multiculturalism, Canada is regarded as one of the best countries to call home. For that reason, many in my riding of Brampton North have put their pride on full display. Baljinder Sekha turned his love for Canada into a song. He had Canadians singing and dancing to Go Canada, a Bhangra song that praises the beauty of the land and accomplishments of its people. While Vahid Sehditi was also so inspired by the welcoming of Canada that he created a hand-stitched needlepoint tapestry with the word welcome woven into it over 100 times in 100 different languages. And it now holds the Guinness World Record for the world's largest needlepoint. Mr. Speaker, if there's one thing I'm sure of, it's that Brampton North residents are proud to be Canadian.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Mr. Speaker, on November 16th, I had the honour to attend a citizenship ceremony for 33 new Canadians from 11 different countries, organized by the Orangeville District Secondary School and the Orangeville Legion Colonel Fitzgerald Branch 233. My compliments to Principal Pat Hamilton, Department Head Paul Nelson, Janine Grin and Kathy Trimble for bringing together the student body, resulting in such an impressive ceremony. Thank you to the Orangeville Legion President Chris Skalazov and the Legion Color Party for the tremendous effort they all undertook in making this ceremony memorable. In addition, I'd like to thank the senior band, Honor Stroll, for her poetry reading, the ODSS choir, the yearbook class, Paul Molly and Tessa's beautiful rendition of O Canada, and the students who formed the flag-waving human tunnel that celebrated each new citizen. A tremendous experience. Finally, I'd like to thank former principals Bill Linney and the late Darrell Kirkland, under whose leadership this initiative began. Well done, ODSS.
Honourable member for Don Valley North.
Mr. Speaker, strengthening cultural diversity by helping others in need is one of Canada's greatest strengths. On Sunday, November 26th, the Armenian community named the late Sarah Koenig as an outstanding Canadian. This nurse helped save 5,000 Armenian orphans in 1922. At the same event, the Minister of Canadian Heritage announced Canada's support for the Armenian community's Interaction Project to empower cultural diversity in the classroom. But today, the Armenian Community Center in my riding is keeping Ms. Corning's spirit alive by helping hundreds of newcomers from Syria. As you can see, Mr. Speaker, when we welcome and help newcomers, we strengthen our society in long-standing and significant ways. Thank you.
Honourable member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, Canadian football was at its best this weekend in two cities, Hamilton with the Vanier Cup and Ottawa for the 105th Grey Cup. Mr. Speaker, I have watched football for over 60 years and broadcast 500 games on radio over 20 seasons for the Cats or the Argonauts, so I believe I am qualified to pronounce this as one of the most exciting games our league has ever seen. The Argonaut victory will go down in football history in part because of the quality of their opponent, the Calgary Stampeders. It speaks to the amazing quality of Canadian football and its ability to bring our country together for a party and a sports spectacle second to none. It also reflects the message of diversity created and broadcast by Commissioner Randy Ambrosi. We are a league as diverse as the country, a league where what makes each of us different makes us all stronger. It is a reminder of how great things can be if, as the Argo motto says, we all pull together.
Member for Saskatoon Grasswood.
Mr. Speaker, today we learned that His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, is delighted to announce the engagement of Prince Harry to Miss Meghan Markle. The couple became engaged earlier this month. With the blessing of their families, the couples are planning to wed next spring. Following the nuptials, the couple will reside at Nottingham Cottage at Kensington Palace. The couple share a common passion for humanitarian work. Their union forges an inspirational powerhouse with promise of meaningful contributions to those in need. The couple kindled their relationship here in Canada, and Canadians wish the greatest happiness to Prince Harry and Miss Markle as they begin their journey together in life. Thank you.
Honourable member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr.
Speaker, on November 13th, I had the honor of recognizing exceptional people from my riding for the Aurora Oak Ridges Richmond Hill Canada 150 Citizenship Award ceremony. The award recipients all represent Canada's commitment to innovation and diversity, thought leadership, and the important Canadian values of diversity, inclusion, and compassion. From high school students who developed software to help the visually impaired learn to read Braille, to a man who developed technology for pharmaceutical molecular structures, to a world-renowned film director, to the first Canadian circumnavigation by helicopter, these individuals truly reflect the best Canada has to offer, and I am proud to represent them in Ottawa. For Canada 150, we unite as Canadians to imagine a vision, a big, bold vision of what our country can become. These award winners have committed themselves to this vision by dreaming boldly through projects that will position our nation for continued success.
L'honorable député de Nova West.
The Honourable Member for West Nova.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow is the opening day of Canada's most lucrative fishery. I wish the thousands of hard-working lobster fishers who will be heading off the shores of southwestern Nova Scotia a safe and prosperous season. En tant que propriétaire de 37 ports pour...
As an owner of many ports for small boats, it's our federal government's responsibility to ensure that they are accessible for a fishing fleet.
Many of these small craft harbors are in disrepair or do not have enough berthage to accommodate the increasing size of vessels that are a result of a successful fishery. Our government has invested in the harbors in West Nova, but much more good work needs to be done to ensure that our fishers have safe and accessible infrastructure. By continuing to invest in our harbors, the federal government will help the fishing industry get their world-class seafood off their boats and to global markets, and help local communities like those in southwestern Nova Scotia thrive. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for York Simcoe.
Yesterday's 105th Grey Cup was another thriller for the ages. It began in true Canadian fashion with the wet snow falling. Shania Twain arrived for the halftime performance on a dog sled. The Toronto Argonauts played the role of underdog, trailing most of the game. But this is the CFL. With just minutes to go, the Calgary Stampeders were set to put the game out of reach when Argo Cassius Vaughn recovered a Calgary fumble, running it back 109 yards for a touchdown. The game was tied. Then a last-minute field goal put the Argos up by 3. It's true. But the Stamps marched right back down the field set to score. But Matt Black's end-zone interception secured the upset Argo victory in another classic Grey Cup finish. Congratulations to Argos coach Mark Tressman, President Michael Copeland, owner Larry Tenenbaum, and QB Ricky Ray and the entire team on a great win. We honored Jerome Messam, the outstanding Canadian, and Devere Posey, the Grey Cup MVP. Thank you to Commissioner Randy Ambrosi and the entire CFL operation for an outstanding season. The Canadian game is part of our identity, and they gave us a Grey Cup game to remember. We'll see you next year in Edmonton.
The Honourable Member for London North Centre.
Mr. Speaker, it's my honor as a proud Western University alumni and former faculty member to stand and congratulate the Western Mustangs football team on winning the 53rd Vanier Cup. Western handily defeated Laval Rouge et Or, the #1 team in Canada, coming into the national championships. They're not the #1 team anymore, Mr. Speaker. That's because the potent Mustangs offense was too much for any team to handle. During their incredible undefeated 2017 campaign, the Stangs outscored opponents 386 to 105 in the regular season and 261 to 64 in the playoffs. This is arguably the best team ever assembled in the history of university sport when it comes to football, Mr. Speaker. Wow. I'd also like to sincerely congratulate Greg Marshall. Simply put, Greg is one of the greatest football coaches our country has ever produced. This weekend, he was able to check the final box off and become a Vanier champion. He's coached 18 teams, 9 Vanier Cups. He is a marvel for London. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Go.
The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
The United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, or UNDRIP, is a fundamental declaration that underlines the rights of the First Peoples across the world. Recently, the Comox Valley Amnesty International Group held an event in the Comox First Nation Hall to have a discussion on Bill C-262, a bill brought forward by the member from Abitibi Bay James Nunavut EU on UNDRIP. What I have heard clearly from many Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in my riding is that a nation-to-nation relationship should mean respecting the First People of this country. That means supporting Bill C-262. I am pleased to hear the government plans to support this bill. But actions matter more than words, Mr. Speaker. In the context of supporting this bill, I encourage the Minister of Fisheries to take time to talk to the many Indigenous people occupying fish farms in my riding. They have been waiting too long for the discussion on rights and title. In the spirit of UNDRIP, I hope action will be taken soon.
Honourable member for Cypress Hills Grassland.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians and faith communities around the world are still reeling from Friday's mosque attack in Bir El Abed. At least 305 people are dead and hundreds more are injured after the deadliest attack in Egypt's modern history. We express our sincere condolences to all those affected. Events like this impact every one of us. Every person should be free to believe as they choose and express that belief without fear of recrimination or violence. This is a fundamental human right and central to peace and democracy. Mr. Speaker, events like this remind us that Canada is not immune to religious hatred and violence in all its ugly forms. This past January, we were horrified to learn of the cold-blooded murder of worshippers as they were praying at a Quebec City mosque. Cowardly acts such as these are the antithesis of a free society and denigrate what it means to be Canadian. Today we mourn for the worshippers and their families. We extend our heartfelt condolences to the people of Egypt, and we unequivocally condemn this horrible massacre.
Honourable member for Tobique-Mactaquac.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognize the good work of my colleagues, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of International Trade. As an individual from a Canada-U.S. border community, we have a great deal of interest in ensuring that negotiations continue for the best free trade agreement through NAFTA. The importance of everything from manufacturing, tourism, agriculture, to transportation and cross-border power restoration provides assistance to our neighbours in time of need. Cooperation on many fronts, such as ease of the flow of goods and services and people across borders, allow trade to expand. Canada and the U.S. are the world's largest trading partners. The two nations have the world's longest shared border, with a relationship that is vital to continuous economic growth, given that 90% of our Canadian population lives within 160 kilometres of the Canada-U.S. border. A shared border in my riding of Tobique-Mactaquac also means ever-increasing close cultural ties and economic ties. Just as we work across the aisle with one another in this house, it is necessary to ensure that we are able to do the same with our cross-border communities and creating an approach that is non-partisan, signifying a unified front. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions, questions orales. Honourable député de Richmond.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, the opposition has been denouncing the Minister of Finance's conflict of interest for 3 months now. Canadians are more and more concerned, and now we learn that a number of Liberal and members of Parliament are embarrassed by his total lack of ethics. A number of them have said anonymously that the minister should occupy a different position. It's crazy, Mr. Speaker. Now even the Liberal members are turning against the Minister of Finance. Will the Minister of Finance finally realize that Canadians have totally lost trust in him? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I worked with the Ethics Commissioner to be sure that I have no conflict of interest, and in addition, I decided that I must have no even perception of the potential of conflict of interest, and that is why I decided to sell my shares in my company. I will continue to work with the Ethics Commissioner in order to work for Canadians and for Canada. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance is trying to quell the simmering dissent by repeating that everything is just fine now, as if all of a sudden, magically, someone can acquire integrity and transparency after 2 years of conflict of interest just by snapping his fingers. Does that mean that for the past 2 years, when he had not put his shares in a blind trust, was that the Minister of Finance was in a situation of conflict of interest? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I understand clearly why the opposition wants to talk about me, because they don't want to talk about Canadians. We know that it is very important for Canadians to have a good economy. Our economy has a very high rate of growth, 3.7% over the last years. And we're also in a situation where we've got the lowest unemployment rate for the past decade. This is good news for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, the minister continues to repeat that he has nothing to blame himself for, but then he should demonstrate that for us concretely. On Thursday, we tabled a motion calling on the Minister of Finance to declare all of the assets that he purchased and sold in all of his private companies since he was appointed Minister of Finance. This is the only way to find out whether the minister's personal interests are in conflict with his role as the Minister of Finance. So here's my very simple question. Will the Liberal members on the other side of the House show transparency and integrity by voting by voting for our motion tonight? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I have worked with the Ethics Commissioner to be entirely certain that I am not in a conflict of interest, and the important thing is that I continue to work for Canadians. I'm continuing to improve our economy. I'm continuing to be clear that it is important to have more jobs in our country, and that is the case now. We have 500,000 more jobs over the past 2 years, the lowest unemployment level for the past decade. It's an excellent situation for our country right now.
House Leader.
The Finance Minister refuses to answer questions about what assets he has owned over the last 2 years. He says he doesn't need to answer because apparently he has told the Ethics Commissioner everything and it's all good. But, Mr. Speaker, the fact that he is refusing to answer this question directly and that the Liberals refuse to support our motion demonstrates his unwillingness to be transparent with Canadians. Why won't the Finance Minister simply answer the question and reveal to Canadians what assets he has owned over the last 2 years?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, from day one, I have disclosed 100% of my assets to the Ethics Commission. That is the way it works in this House. I will continue to work with her to ensure that I'm free from conflicts of interest. That, Mr. Speaker, is what we do in order to allow us to get on with the important work that Canadians expect us to do. And the good news is that work is making a big difference for Canadians with a higher level of economic growth and more jobs than they've seen in over a decade. It's truly a good situation for our country right now from an economic perspective.
Full Opposition House Leader.
No, Mr. Speaker, this is the problem. The Finance Minister did not disclose everything to the Ethics Commissioner. He forgot that his Morneau Shepell shares were not in a blind trust, and he forgot that he had a villa in France. So, Mr. Speaker, this is why his credibility is on very shaky ground, and he's doing nothing to get himself out of that situation. He answers to the Canadian people, Mr. Speaker. He seems to have forgotten that. Will he simply come clean and publicly disclose what assets he's owned over the last 2 years?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, what I can say is the member opposite is 100% wrong. I disclosed 100% of my assets to the Ethics Commissioner and will continue to work with her in that regard. That is allowing us to get on with the work that we want to do for Canadians. Demonstration last week was particularly important when we demonstrated how we could help Canadians in housing. We outlined our national housing strategy, which is going to make sure that we have 50% less homelessness over the next decade, which is going to ensure that 500,000 Canadians have a key to their own home with a portable benefit that will help them. Mr. Speaker, we're doing the hard work on behalf of Canadians, and we're proud of that.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Neigette-Témiscouata-Basque. Mr. Speaker, if the Minister of Finance had nothing to blame himself for, then he wouldn't have had to pay a fine for not having declared all his assets. And the Minister of Finance has a big problem because every time he tells us that everything is fine, we dig a bit more and we find something else that's not right. Now we know that his former company, Morneau Shepell, regularly signs $1 million contracts with the government. Knowing this, can the Minister explain to us why shortly after his election, the CEO of Morneau Shepell told his shareholders, and I quote, "Government and other public sector organizations represent a significant growth opportunity." The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Open, fair and transparent procurement processes.
Through proactive disclosure of contracts, our government operates according to the principles of openness, transparency, and accountability. The contract issues are compliant with government policies and legislation, just as they were many times under the former Conservative government.
Honourable member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata Basque.
The finance minister is actually so nervous with all the ethical scandals surrounding him. Liberal MPs also becoming nervous. They're scared that the minister's mistakes will hurt them, and I get it. The whole story just seems to be getting worse and worse. They talk with their constituents the way that we do, and they know that Canadians are fed up with Liberals working for themselves and for their friends. How does the finance minister hope to regain the trust of Canadians when even his own colleagues are starting to lose faith in him?
Honourable Finance Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the way we will work for Canadians is the way that we've worked for the last 2 years. We will think every day about how we can improve our economy, and we will think every day about how we can ensure that middle-class Canadians see success as a result of that work. The good news is, over the last 2 years, we've done exactly that. Our economy is doing well, better than it's done in a decade. Middle-class Canadians are feeling better, with the Canada Child Benefit putting, on average, $2,300 more after tax into 9 out of 10 families' pockets. So, Mr. Speaker, what we're seeing is an improved economy, helping middle-class Canadians. That's the work that we're going to continue to do to ensure they remain confident.
Honourable member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie.
Speaker, this morning a brief was submitted to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court asking her to include Canadian officials in her investigation into potential war crimes committed in Afghanistan. It has been over 10 years, and this dark chapter in our history has yet to close. Will the Liberal government finally call for public inquiry and accept that justice is something you call for not only when you are in opposition?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is a strong supporter of the International Criminal Court and its work to ensure accountability for war crimes. Torture is abhorrent and illegal. Torture is contrary to Canadian and international law and is against Canadian values. Our military personnel deployed on operations respect the Canadian Armed Forces Code of Conduct and all applicable Canadian domestic and international law.
The honourable member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, Canada transferred hundreds of Afghan detainees, knowing full well that they seriously risk torture. For years, we've been calling on the government to get to the bottom of things with a real investigation, one that is public, open, and transparent. Now that legal experts have asked the ICC to include Canada in its investigation on potential war crimes in Afghanistan, will this government finally promise to cooperate? Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, Canada is proud to support the International Criminal Court. Torture flies in the face of Canadian principles and goes against our values. Our military personnel deployed respects the Code of Conduct of the Canadian Armed Forces and all Canadian and international laws that are applicable.
For Carleton. On December 7th, 2015, the Minister of Finance introduced a motion in the House of Commons to raise taxes effective January 1st of the forthcoming year. The stock market dropped, and so did Morneau Shepell, by 5 percentage points, but not before someone could sell $10 million in Morneau Shepell shares 1 week before that drop and that bill was introduced. Can the minister tell us who sold those shares?
Order. I'm not sure how a question of who sold shares in a company is a question responsibility of the government. However, I see the Minister of Finance is rising.
Mr. Speaker, I actually see it as an opportunity to talk about why we did, in fact, raise taxes. What we did was we said to Canadians that we thought the appropriate thing to do was to raise taxes on the top 1%. And what we said that would enable us to do was to lower taxes on middle-class Canadians. So what we did was we lowered taxes on Canadians, 45,000 and 90,000 tax bracket, by 7%. It went down from 22% to 20.5%. Thus, what we did, Mr. Speaker, was lowered middle-class taxes on 9 million Canadians. We think this is a really important initiative to ensure tax fairness in our country, and we'll stay on top of that.
The member for Carleton.
The Minister's office told John Ivison that he sold 680,000 Morneau Chappelle shares. Whoa. At 10:25 on November 30th, 2015, someone sold 680,000 Morneau Chappelle shares. That someone would have saved $500,000 by avoiding the drop in the stock market that followed his introduction of tax measures in this House of Commons. So is it just a coincidence that those two transactions line up so carefully? Or in fact, did the minister jump the gun and sell his shares before he introduced his tax measures?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I think I have a good idea of why members on the opposite side are trying to create conspiracy theories out of thin air. I think their objective is to deflect Canadians from understanding what they don't want them to understand. And that's that the policies that we put in place are making an enormous positive difference for Canadian families. So by introducing the Canada Child Benefit, we're helping 9 out of 10 families do much better. By indexing that, what we're going to see is that we'll keep up with inflation. Mr. Speaker, we're also seeing that we're moving forward with the working income tax benefit to help working Canadians to get into the middle class. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue on these efforts.
Order. I would urge the member for Foothills. We all love to hear from when he has the floor, to reserve his comments for when he has the floor. Now, member for Carleton.
Reading the Liberal platform, one would have expected that that tax increase would take effect at the beginning of the fiscal year. That's when it projected revenues. Instead, in the House of Commons, the minister confirmed that it would take effect at the beginning of the calendar year. Now, investors quickly sold their shares in the 2015 year so that they could realize their gains in a lower taxed year. The markets dropped, Morneau Chappelle dropped by 5%, but not before someone who knew what was going on was able to sell his shares and save $500,000. Wow. Who was that somebody? Who was it?
Once again, it is not clear that this is within the responsibility of the government. And as I see no one rising to answer, now member for Carleton.
Well, it is actually the responsibility of government to ensure that no minister ever uses inside knowledge to benefit from transactions on the stock market, Mr. Speaker. And we know that when this member locked in stone changes to the tax system that would raise capital gains tax, investors quickly sold so that they could make their gains before those changes took effect. The stock market dropped as a result. Morneau Chappelle went down 5%. But somebody sold $10 million in shares before that could happen. Somebody sold those shares before the minister introduced his measures on the floor of the House of Commons. Was that this minister?
Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to answer from the fact that as Minister of Finance, I'm looking to make sure that our economy does well. Of course, one of the ramifications of that is positive.
Order. I need to hear the answer. Members need to hear the answer. We need to know whether someone said something that's out of order. Or would members prefer we went on? Something else. Order. Now, the Minister of Finance has the floor.
As one of the things that the Finance Minister does, we work to make sure that the economy is doing well. What's happened over the last couple of years is the economy's done well. Of course, one of the positive upsides of that is sometimes the stock market does well as well. Of course, the stock market is significantly up from when we came into office. Mr. Speaker, we're working on behalf of middle-class Canadians, trying to help Canadians to get in the middle class. The good news is those efforts are working. Canadians are seeing the benefit. At the same time, they're seeing advantages across the economy.
The Honourable Member for Louis Order. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious and important question. On December 7, 2015, the Minister of Finance tabled tax measures that had a direct impact on the stock market. Among other things, the Morneau Chappelle lost 5% of its value. 1 week earlier, on November 30th, someone sold over 6,000 shares and saved $500,000. Will the Minister of Finance confirm to us that it was he himself who conducted this transaction? Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I will continue to work for Canadians across the country, and the good news is that our economy is working. Because of our policies, we have delivered economic growth that is the highest over the past decade, and we have the lowest unemployment rate for the past several years. It's good news for our Canadians across the country, with a good situation for them and for all Canadians. Order. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, once again, this is a very serious matter. For months, we've been repeating that the Minister of Finance is in a conflict of interest, and now it's become as big as an elephant. Can the Minister tell us who sold Morneau Shepell shares only a few days before the Minister of Finance tabled a tax policy that meant that it lost 5% of its value? Will the Minister finally, seriously tell Canadians the truth? Was he the one who sold those shares? No. The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, what I can tell Canadians, and the reason that the opposition wants to talk about me is because they don't want to talk about Canadians. What we want to do is talk about our economy, and the good news is that it's working with a very high growth rate for Canadians, and with the situation that for the middle class that is much better than before. So we're going to continue with our plan to improve the economic situation. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General was scathing with regard to the CRA last week. He accused it of misrepresentation, and yet the Liberals refused to study this matter in depth at the Finance Committee. In addition to hiding data and figures, they are hiding from accountability in this House. It's regrettable for Canadians who are expecting them to take this matter seriously. So why is the Minister refusing to assume her responsibility for her pathetic performance? What does she have to hide? Her incompetence? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I read the report of the Auditor General, and I fully agree with all of his recommendations. From our first budget, we invested $50 million to help call centres to be able to offer better service to Canadians. We have already begun to hire more agents to respond to more Canadians, and we have an action plan that targets the modernization of our telephone platform, the improvement of training as well, and the updating of service standards.
Victoria. Instead of targeting 5 wealthy neighborhoods, the Liberals can act right now on tax avoidance by closing tax loopholes. Hear, hear. In fact, the Liberals voted in favor of an NDP motion that would do just that, but of course they failed to act. My private member's bill aims to shut down tax loopholes very similar to the ones that were used in the Paradise Papers. So, simple question, will the Liberals prove to Canadians they're working for the middle class by closing tax loopholes to make sure their wealthy friends stop abusive tax avoidance? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, we are fully committed to fighting tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. The NDP talks about the importance of tackling tax evasion, but it's criticizing the means that we're taking to do so, Mr. Speaker. We have delivered results. We have a good plan. Last year, there were 335 cases that referred to criminal investigation. Last year, we had 123 search warrants that were executed. We continue to work to have a tax system that is fair for all Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Pape, the famous financial expert, wrote in the Globe and Mail after the minister's tax increase was introduced on the floor of the House of Commons. If you've been considering taking profits on some of your stocks, do it now. You'll save the equivalent of 2% federal tax plus the provincial share. As a result, many sold their shares, and the stock market dropped. Morneau Shepell dropped 5%. But a week before the minister introduced his measures on the floor of the House of Commons, someone sold $10 million of Morneau Shepell shares. Was it him?
Yeah. Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I will continue to advocate on behalf of the tax system that's fair. What we did, Mr. Speaker, was something that we believe was absolutely the right thing to do.
We did raise taxes on the top 1%, including families like mine.
Order, 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 order. I really would encourage members not to interrupt and don't have the floor. They know that Standing Order 18 prohibits it. And so I'd ask my honourable friend from Cypress Hills Grasslands and others not to interrupt. When it's not their turn, wait for their turn. That's not that much to ask. I think members can manage it. The Honourable Minister of Finance has the floor.
As I said, Mr. Speaker, we were very pleased to move forward on a package of tax changes that made an enormous difference on 9 million Canadians. Lowering taxes on middle-class Canadians was financed by raising taxes on the top 1%. We saw that as a way to make sure that our tax system was more fair. And we continued down that path by looking at additional tax changes this past summer, lowering small business tax rates, finding some advantages for the wealthy.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Well, the minister says he raised taxes on the wealthy. He's pretty wealthy. If anybody sold their shares before the end of 2015, they would have not paid a penny more because of these tax increases. But far more important than that, if they were able to sell before these measures were crystallized in a motion on the floor of the House of Commons, they would have avoided the resulting drop in the stock market. Yep. In particular, the 5% drop in Morneau Chappelle shares. That person saved a cool $500,000. Was the minister that person?
Yes, the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the members across the way will continue to focus on me because they don't want to talk about what's actually going on. What's actually going on is the policies that we put in place are making a better situation for our economy and a better situation for Canadian families. Middle-class Canadians are feeling much more secure 2 years into this government than they were in the previous decade. That's because they have the Canada Child Benefit. That's because their taxes have been lowered. That's because the future looks more bright with higher economic growth. We'll keep on our plan.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
As a former corporate executive, the Honourable Member would know that selling shares on advanced information is a very serious problem. He would also know that most corporate executives freely disclose widely to the public when they buy and sell shares so that they can be scrutinized and that they have no advantage in the stock market. That honourable member, if he had made no mistake or broke no rules in the timing of the sale of shares, why doesn't he stand now and tell us when he sold his 680,000 shares in Morneau Chappelle?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm well aware of the fact that the opposition will continue to focus on me so they don't focus on what's actually going on here. We will continue to talk about what we're doing for Canadians in every dimension, in our housing policy, in helping with child benefits, and making sure that we get to fair trade agreements. We will work on behalf of Canadians to make sure that our economy stays strong, their families stay strong for today and for tomorrow.
Here. Député d'Hochelaga.
Honourable Member for Hochelaga. Mr. Speaker, earlier this month, to answer our questions, the Prime Minister's LGBTQ Special Advisor said that the apology would be presented to the community would not include remedial action. But since last Thursday, we're told that there might be a law to eliminate criminal records for consensual same-sex activity. Can the government confirm that the apology that will be given tomorrow to the LGBTQ community will include remedial action that is required? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Canadians need to feel safe and free of discrimination. We have already made important progress on these matters with Bill C-16 and C-39. The Special Advisor on LGBTQ matters, the member for Edmonton Centre, as well as others, are going to make sure that when the apology is presented, it will be complete and will include remedial measures. Official apologies will be presented tomorrow, November 28th, and we're going to work with the National Advisory Committee to make sure that the apology is complete.
Mr. Speaker, it would be ironic if this government makes a just apology to the LGBTQ community tomorrow and then fails to act to address ongoing discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Failing to act will mean the government will leave itself open to having to make future apologies. So, Mr. Speaker, will this government commit today to working with us and the LGBTQ community to remove ongoing discrimination from federal law and policy, starting with the unscientific blood ban?
The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, as I said already in French, all Canadians should be safe to be themselves, free from discrimination of any kind. We have already made significant progress in this House on these issues with Bills C-16 and C-39. Our special advisor on LGBTQ2 issues, the MP for Edmonton Centre, has been working with the community concerning the different issues that affect them in their everyday lives, and we have committed to apologize in an inclusive and meaningful manner tomorrow. Our government is working with a national advisory committee representing the community to make sure that these excuses are...
The Honourable Member for Avalon.
Mr. Speaker, we know that residential schools were designed to strip away the identity, culture, language, pride and spirit of the Indigenous children, and many who attended them suffered neglect, abuse, mistreatment and discrimination. Addressing and making amends to the survivors of this dark chapter part of our history is a vital part of our country's commitment to meaningful reconciliation. Can the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations update the House on Canada's efforts to support survivors' journey of healing with the former students of residential schools in Newfoundland and Labrador?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member from Avalon for his question. The abuse suffered by Indigenous children at Newfoundland and Labrador residential schools was a horrific part of our history, and their exclusion from the 2008 residential schools apology was simply wrong. I was humbled and honoured to join the Prime Minister last Friday when he righted that wrong and offered the historic and long overdue apology to the former students on behalf of the Government of Canada. We know this is only a first step in their healing journey, but as the Prime Minister said, they no longer bear that burden alone.
The Honourable Member Member for Carleton.
Fiscal policy changes are only ever certain when they're introduced in the House of Commons. Before that, they're just political promises. The Liberals promised only a $10 billion deficit. That was gone. They promised that they would lower taxes, Mr. Speaker. That promise has been broken. They promised once they get rid of the GST. That promise is gone. That's why fiscal policy measures are only certain when tabled in the House of Commons. Yep. The markets learned on December 7th the coming into force date of tax increases that moved markets, but not before someone was able to get out and avoid the losses. Was that minister that person?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this is a very nice opportunity for us to talk about promises that were kept. Promises that were kept include reducing taxes on middle-class Canadians, for 9 million Canadians seeing a 7% reduction in the tax bracket from $45,000 to $90,000. Promises kept. We said that we would raise taxes on the top 1%. Promises kept. We said that we would take a look at the Canada Child Benefit and increase it significantly while helping those families who needed it most. These promises were kept to make sure that our economy would grow and middle-class Canadians would see the benefits. We're going to keep on with those promises, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Carleton.
The reason there's so much detail, there's so much confusion about the detail of fiscal proposals before they're introduced in the House of Commons is because often platforms say confusing things. The Liberal platform would have you believe that revenue from this tax change would only start to be realized at the beginning of the fiscal year. But when the minister came to this House to introduce his December 7th tax motion, he indicated it would take effect at the beginning of the calendar year. That news moved markets, but not before someone was able to sell their shares and save $500,000. Was that person the Minister of Finance?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure how we can be more clear. We promised Canadians that we would lower middle-class taxes. We promised Canadians that we would raise taxes in the top 1%. We followed through on both those promises because we knew that they would ensure we had a fairer tax system. We also said we'd make sure middle-class Canadians see benefits from the changes in child benefits. These things, Mr. Speaker, ushered in a spark plug for a growing economy, which is exactly what we've seen over the course of the last couple of years, helping middle-class Canadians, strong growth rate, more jobs across our country. We'll stay on with our approaches, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Carleton.
The member says he's not sure how he could be more clear. How about a no? Let me just give him a suggestion. He could say yes, or he could say no. So I will ask again. Trading records show that somebody sold over $10 million worth of Morneau Chappelle shares 1 week before the minister introduced tax measures that caused Morneau Chappelle to drop by 5%. Was that seller the Minister of Finance, yes or no?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, in focusing on me, what the opposition doesn't want to focus on is what we're actually doing for Canadians. We have 36 million Canadians. 9 million of them were advantaged with our middle-class tax cut. What we are going to continue to do is work on behalf of Canadians, focus on the things that they want us to do. That is growing the economy, making sure we have jobs that are helping Canadians, making sure that families are doing better. That's what we'll continue to focus on, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Carleton.
I don't know why what the minister seems to have to hide. When he was a corporate executive, insider trading reports would have required the public reporting of his purchase and sale of company shares. So he should be used to telling people when he buys and sells. If he's got nothing to hide, he'd just continue that practice now. Did the minister sell his shares in Morneau Chappelle in the amount of $10 million exactly 1 week before he tabled in the House of Commons market-moving tax changes?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as a member opposite well knows, we all work together with the Ethics Commissioner to make sure that all of our financial affairs are fully disclosed. That is what I've done from day one. That, Mr. Speaker, is what's allowed me to do the work that we're doing on behalf of Canadians. And the good news is that that work is showing big advantages for Canadians across our country. 500,000 new jobs over the course of 2 years, lower rate of unemployment than there was during the entire time of the previous government. So, Mr. Speaker, we are seeing a really positive benefit for Canadians, and we're feeling positive about the opportunities for the next generation of Canadians as well.
Member for Carleton.
The minister's own department provided a report earlier this year showing that wealthy Canadians moved income into the 2015 tax year in order to avoid paying this new higher rate. One of the ways we know they did it was by selling their shares after the finance minister tabled his tax measures on the floor of this House of Commons. It caused the markets to drop. The data is right there. But somebody knew enough to sell $10 million of Morneau Chappelle shares before that drop could occur, saving him $500,000. Once again, was that the minister?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite might actually take a look at the stock market to see it's actually gone up over the last couple of years. It may be unknown to him, but that's a result of some things that have gone on in the global economy. It's something that's gone on as well within the Canadian economy. And that is that our economy is doing well. Businesses are feeling optimistic. The reason they're feeling optimistic is the investments we made in middle-class Canadians have shown to actually be doing a good job to help those people to put more money into the economy. And that has led us to a higher rate of growth, more jobs, and a more optimistic outlook for the future. We hope that that will continue to be the case, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de
Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagot. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister himself promised in December 2016 that he would act to extend employment insurance sick leave benefits after a year. Guess what? Still nothing. 15 weeks is not enough, especially when someone is dealing with serious health problems. After 15 weeks, people who are ill have no income. How can one be seriously ill and pay the bills? It's impossible. When will the Prime Minister finally keep his commitment and review the EI sick leave benefits system? The Honourable Minister for Social Development. Thank you. I am pleased to be part of a government that believes in the EI system. and it's going to be reviewed not only for sick leave benefits, but it's also for people who are living through difficult circumstances. Since 2016, we've implemented solid measures to increase the flexibility and generosity of the EI system. We will continue to do so because we firmly believe that this work is just beginning. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-Patrie. Christmas is coming, and for many Quebecers, that means that Ciné Cadeau, Christmas classics, will be on TV. Everyone's excited to see Asterix and Obelix again. But the holidays are likely to be sad for the families of the workers of the Davie shipyards. After having delivered the resupply ship Asterisk, they're just waiting to build the second ship, the Obelix. 113 people have already lost their jobs, and at least 800 other jobs will disappear, according to the union. Unless one has been committed, one would expect that this shipyard would get its fair share. Are the Liberals making an effort to ignore Quebec, or does it just come naturally to them? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Mr. Speaker, our government is saddened by the potential job losses and is recognizing the excellent work done by the employees at Davie. Our government has been in contact with representatives of Davie Shipyards and the union. There will be opportunities for Davie Shipyards. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, Canadians want to know. The Minister of Finance has a golden opportunity to be truthful with Canadians. In 2015, he tabled a fiscal measure that would have a direct impact on Morneau Chapelle. A week before, someone sold $10 million worth of shares and was able to save $500,000 after the fiscal measure was tabled. Will the Liberals finally be honest with Canadians? Yes or no? Is he the one who sold his shares for Morneau Chapelle? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, like all the members in this place, I worked with the Commissioner to make sure that I have no conflicts of interest. I will continue to work for Canadians to improve our economic situation, to improve the situation of the middle class, and to improve the situation of families throughout our country. Happily, our policies are working. We have a better economic situation with the highest level of economic growth in a decade and the lowest unemployment rate. This is a great situation for Canadians. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the countdown is on. Sooner or later, the Minister of Finance will have to say whether he was the one who sold shares in Morneau Chapelle a week before the Minister of Finance tabled measures that changed the value of Morneau Chapelle shares by 5%. I'm going to ask the Minister of Finance, can he finally be truthful with Canadians? Is he the one, and not someone else, who sold shares on November 30th, just before he tabled his fiscal measure? That led to a 5% loss and $500,000 of potential loss to the person that sold those shares, the Minister of Finance. I know that the opposition wants to talk about me because they don't want to talk about the situation for Canadians. Their situation is much better than it was before. We have the highest level of economic growth for a decade and the lowest unemployment rate in a decade. This is a great situation for Canadian families. We are going to continue to work for them to improve our situation in the future.
Carlton. Mr. Speaker, prominent financial advisors told investors in publications across the country to sell their shares and realize their gains before the end of the calendar year of 2015, after this minister introduced his tax measures on the floor of the House of Commons. But a week before he did that, somebody sold $10 million of shares in Morneau Chapelle, saving $500,000 by avoiding the consequent drop in the stock market. If the minister has nothing to hide, can he confirm if that person was him?
Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I have absolutely nothing to hide, and that's why I disclosed all of my assets to the Commissioner on Ethics. I will continue to work with her the way all members in this House are expected to work with her. That's important. That allows us to get on with the work that we are doing on behalf of Canadians, the kind of work that led us to make investments in housing that are going to make an enormous difference over the next decade. That's the kind of work that we know that will make a difference. Continuing on this work will make a huge difference for the future of our country, for the future of Canadians.
Order. The honourable member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous peoples are the fastest growing segment of the Canadian workforce. In my riding of Sault Ste. Marie and across the country, our economic growth depends on their success. The Minister of Employment, Workforce, Development and Labour recently went on a tour of Northern Ontario. She stopped in places such as Sault Ste. Marie and other ridings. Could the Minister update this House on the work our government is doing to support Indigenous peoples in Northern Ontario and across this great country?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member from Sault Ste. Marie for his question, and I was pleased to visit his community recently along with Sudbury, Mishkegogumeng, Nabinimik, and Whitefish Lake First Nation. And we know that to grow the middle class, that Indigenous people must have equal opportunities for skill development and good quality jobs. And that's why after our government took office, we increased funding for Indigenous job skill training for the first time in 20 years. And we will continue to work in partnership with Indigenous communities and people across the country to ensure they have the skills and opportunities they need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Carleton.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, financial advisors told investors to sell their shares after the minister introduced his tax increase on the floor of the House of Commons. His department has now confirmed that that's exactly what happened. That's why revenues in the subsequent year from wealthiest Canadians actually went down. And the stock market data itself demonstrates a drop after he introduced his measures. Morneau-Chapelle down 5%. But once again, someone was able to sell their shares a week before that. Was that the minister, that somebody?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said, I will continue to work with the Ethics Commissioner because that is the appropriate way that members in this House disclose all of their assets, as I did, to make sure that we can do the work that's appropriate. We will continue with the policies that the opposition doesn't like, the policies that are helping the middle class, the policies that they're not voting against, like the increase in taxes on the 1%. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to do that because we know not only are they helping middle-class families, but they're actually helping our economy to grow. So that is why we are so proud of what's been done over the last couple of years.
Honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, Sunday afternoon, a barge carrying 3.5 million litres of diesel and 0.5 million litres of gasoline lost power on BC's Central Coast. A little over a year ago, the HoC people faced almost the exact same threat, and the federal government promised to make things better. The Transport Minister met with Chief Councillor Marilyn Slett today. She personally gave him a copy of the HoC's Indigenous Marine Response Centre proposal. True nation-to-nation relationship means backing up your words with real actions. So will the Liberals support the first ever Indigenous-led coastal protection strategy?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question. As you know, we are determined to improve marine safety. That's why we put in place the Oceans Protection Plan. And I want to say that that includes a strong involvement from our coastal First Nations. We need them to help us to monitor and to respond to marine incidents. And I want to thank the HoC Tribal Council for their report, which they sent me about 10 days ago, which is a proposal on how to help. We'll look at that very carefully. As my colleague said, I met with Chief Marilyn Slett about an hour ago, and she brought me up to date on her concerns with respect to the current incident with the Jake.
The honourable member for Scarborough North.
Monsieur le Président, growing our
Mr. Speaker.
is key for many Canadian businesses. These markets provide a significant opportunity for growth, and we know that consumer demand for Canada's world-class agricultural products continues to grow. Earlier this month, I had the pleasure of joining our Minister of Agriculture at the Royal Winter Fair. And this was just before his mission to China. Now that he is back, can the minister update us on our government's plan to create opportunities for Canadian farmers, growers, and producers?
Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague from Scarborough North for his question and hard work. This month I led a very successful trade mission which is a vital market for Canadian farmers. During the mission, our agricultural industry signed deals of new business worth nearly $300 million for blueberries, barley, swine genetics, and ice wine. I was proud to help put more Canadian products on Chinese store shelves and e-commerce platforms, which will help to create good, well-paying jobs in Canada and help put more money in the pockets of Canadian farmers.
Member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, it's not clear that the minister understands the seriousness of the situation. Somebody unloaded $10 million of Morneau Chappelle shares 1 week before that minister introduced measures that would cause the share value to go down by 5%, a significant drop. That individual was able to save $500,000. Wow. Now, I'm going to give the minister one last chance. Will he answer the question? Was he the one who sold those shares at that time?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, what's clear is that the member opposite might not understand how it works in this House. The way it works is we work with the Ethics Commission to disclose all of our assets, which is exactly what I've done, in order to make sure that I can get on with the work that's going to make a difference for Canadians. Back in 2015, what that work entailed was thinking about how we could lower taxes on middle-class Canadians and raise them on the top 1%. What it entailed was thinking about how we could means test the Canada Child Benefit, providing much more for middle-class families. Those policies ushered in a rate of growth that the previous government could only have hoped for in their wildest dreams. Mr. Speaker, we've seen a positive situation for families across our country.
Honourable Member for Pierre-Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, 800 people are going to lose their jobs soon at Davies. 83% of contracts were given to Halifax, 17% in Vancouver, and not even 1% for Quebec. And yet, everybody's ready at Davie. They just want to work. Ottawa would rather go give it all to the Irvings. Is the Prime Minister going to go see the 800 workers at Davie and tell them why he decided to let their jobs go to Halifax? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Mr. Speaker, our government is always ready to support workers and their families. We recognize the excellent work accomplished by employees at Davie. Our government is working with leadership at Davie and with unions. We are going to continue discussions and find a solution. Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Mr. Speaker, again, we have the same messages over and over. The opposition asks questions and we always get the same answer. My question is for the Minister of the Defence. How is he going to explain that he defends 3 oceans with 1 resupply ship for 2 fleets and imperil 800 jobs in Quebec, when in Quebec we have a jewel of the Canadian fleet at low cost and on time? Explain that to me.
Defense.
Mr. Speaker, the Navy is in the midst of one of the most comprehensive fleet modernization in its peacetime history. As part of the National Shipbuilding Strategy and under our new defence policy, our government is acquiring joint support ships to permanently replace the Protector-class auxiliary or replenishment vessels. The project will deliver 2 ships that will provide core replenishment, sea lift capabilities, and support to our operations. We are committed to building new ships for the Navy and to maintain Canada's naval capabilities over the long term. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Nunavut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Finance. The current funding formula for Nunavut falls short, making it difficult for the territorial government to adequately provide basic services. I have raised this concern on numerous occasions, and for good reason. Just look at the stats. Only 35% of students graduate high school. The suicide rate is 10 times the national average, and the core housing need that is 3 times the national rate. And there are many more. My question is, will the Minister commit to working with the territorial government to adjust the formula to more of a needs-based approach? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
I'd like to thank the Honourable Member from Nunavut for his question and for the important work he's doing for his communities. We're always engaging with provinces and territories to better understand their challenges and needs, and are committed to important issues like the ones the member just listed. We know that higher costs associated with housing in the north leave many families in core housing need. This is why last week, building on funding committed in Budget 2017 for housing, we've announced $300 million over 10 years to meet the specific needs for housing in the North. Of the $300 million we've just committed for more stable housing funding in territories, $240 million will be allocated.
L'honorable député de Terrebonne se lève avec un...
The Honourable Member for Terrebonne has a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I ask the consent of this House to table the following motion. It is very modest. That this House deplore the loss of 800 jobs by the end of the year at the Davies Shipyard in Lévis. The Honourable Member, does he have unanimous consent to table the motion?
D'accord.
In agreement? The House has heard the motion. Is it the House's pleasure to adopt the motion? Carried.
Tabling of documents, dépôt de documents. Dépôt de documents.
Tabling of documents. Introduction of government bills. Statements by ministers. Reports from interparliamentary delegations. The Honourable Member for Ottawa South.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 34.1, I have the honour to present to the House in both official languages a report of the Canadian Group of the Interparliamentary Union respecting its participation at the Steering Committee of the 12+ Group held in Porto, Portugal on September 10th and 11th, 2017.
What a great.
Oh, yeah. Présentation de rapport de comité.
Presenting reports from committees, the Honourable Member for Yukon. Pursuant to the standing order, I have the honour to present in both official languages the 47th report of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs, changes to membership of standing and standing joint committees. If the House grants unanimous consent, I intend to present it later today.
Speech.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honour to present in both official languages the 20th report of the Standing Committee on Finance in relation to the Supplementary Estimates B 2017-18.
Introduction of private members' bills. First reading of Senate public bills. Motions. The Honourable Member for Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, if the House grants its consent, I move that the 47th report of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs presented to the House today be adopted. The Honourable Member, does he have unanimous consent to present the motion? Agreed. The House has heard the motion. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Carried.
Presenting petitions, présentation de pétitions. The Honourable Member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Speaker, I'm pleased to present a petition signed by residents of my riding of Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke. The petitioners call on the government to cancel their tax grab against doctors, farmers, and small business owners, which directly affects their employment, access to timely medical care, and affordability of food.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Loup. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to represent the vast majority of people in my riding by presenting a petition signed by over 9,000 people who are member of the Female Farmers Association of Quebec, who are against the legalization of marijuana, and especially the rushed bills C-45 and C-46, given that police bodies and legal bodies say they are not ready to manage the situation. They call on the government to institute a moratorium on legalizing marijuana until provinces and territories are ready to provide a framework for legalized marijuana. A poll found that 82% of my voters are against this. Perhaps the 40 Liberal members opposite haven't taken the time. I'd like to remind the member that it's not a time for debate when we present petitions. It is only the presentation of petitions, it's not debate.
Courtney Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, I'm honoured to rise today to table a petition on behalf of Amnesty International Comox Valley Action Circle. We, the undersigned, urge the Government of Canada to take action to create an extractive sector ombudsman with the power to independently investigate complaints and make recommendations to corporations and the Government of Canada, and to create legislated access to Canadian courts for people who have been seriously harmed by the international operations of Canadian companies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to present a petition on behalf of thousands, I guess, I would say, of Canadians that are concerned with the current Bankruptcy Act that the federal government holds. In particular, they reference the differences between the provincial and federal legislation and have great concerns over the fact that provincial legislation ensures pension plan deficiencies be the first and super priority creditor, or that's at least what they're asking for. They also go on to talk about how between the federal and provincial legislations, the provincial legislation is much more generous to employees. So I would ask that this petition be forwarded on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to present a petition on the subject of carbon taxes as recommended by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, as well as the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. And although some might think the petition is now out of date, since we haven't seen any legislation yet before this House, the petitioners request that the carbon price be organized under the principle of carbon fee and dividend, in which carbon fees are collected at source and the amounts are returned to each of the taxpayers through whatever jurisdiction applies the tax. Petitioners ask for the House of Commons to examine fee and dividend as the preferred method. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure today to rise in the House and present a petition on behalf of the residents of Couch and Malahat Langford, who recognize that the Federal Minister of Environment and the Minister for Fisheries and Oceans have a renewed mandate to increase the protection of Canada's marine and coastal areas, and they also recognize that the establishment of a national marine conservation area in the Strait of Georgia was needed to protect that marine environment. And therefore, the undersigned residents call upon the Government of Canada to establish that national marine conservation area in the Salish Sea and to consult and work with First Nations to ensure that we leave this legacy for our children. Thank you.
Presenting petitions, Honorable Député, the Honourable Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
I bring again voices of coastal communities into this House to urge the government to adopt my legislation, Bill C-352, to solve the long-standing problem of abandoned vessels. Petitioners from Nanaimo and Ladysmith urge this Parliament in particular to vote in favour of unblocking debate on this legislation. They want to see their solutions that they've been advocating for decades come to this House for full debate, and we urge our parliamentarians in the vote tomorrow and the next day to accede to their hopes that their voices will be heard.
I remind members not to engage in debate during the presentation of petitions. The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I present a petition on behalf of my constituents concerning safe water for First Nation communities. Along with Human Rights Watch, the undersigned demand in a very lengthy preamble that we actually ensure that all First Nation communities have access to clean water, that there are wastewater treatment plants on First Nations, and that have sufficient regulation and sufficient funds in capital operation and maintenance costs for the community, and household systems and mechanisms to track progress to ensure that no First Nation child or any First Nation person in this country does not have clean, adequate, and good drinking water. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Presenting petitions. Questions on the order paper. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask that all questions be allowed to stand at this time, please.
Is it agreed? Agreed and so ordered. J'ai reçu notice d'une...
I have received notice of a request for emergency debate from the Honourable Member from Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call upon the authorization that at the adjournment of the House we may be able to debate the important question that requires urgent consideration pursuant to Standing Order 52. As you know, Islamic terrorists who come back to Canada after having fought our own soldiers and allies are a question of national security. Canadians expect to be aware of this threat, and the government needs to show that it has a solid plan focused on the priorities of any government, the security of their citizens. Since the Minister of Public Safety is incapable of furnishing this House with updated data concerning these terrorists, who they are, where they live, and if they are being monitored as they should be, I'm requesting an emergency debate on this matter so that Canadians can receive exact, accurate information on this matter and to ensure that the government is doing everything in its power to maximize Canadian safety. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles and for having raised this question, but I do not find that it meets the requirements of the standing order. Ordre du jour. Orders of the day. Government Bills Commons, resuming debate at the report stage of Bill C-63, Bill number 2, Budget Implementation Act, March 22nd, 2017, and putting in place other measures.
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil has 5.5 minutes remaining in his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to go back to, before I resume my comments, I want to go back to question period and what I thought, quite frankly, was an egregious display of contempt for our parliamentary democracy. The minister was asked multiple times to answer whether he sold his shares in Morneau Shepell in advance of his tax reform announcement, and he failed to answer the question on multiple occasions. So it begs the question, in the absence of the minister answering those questions on a bill that, quite frankly, he has influence over, I would call into question the ability of Canadians to have confidence in conducting further business on this bill, Mr. Speaker. And therefore,
As a result, I move, seconded by the opposition House Leader, that the debate now be adjourned.